First time I took a sip, I had to spit it out. That half-drank yellow jacket by daddy on the couch. He knew I didn't like it, you could tell by my face. But that first taste of that underage could never be replaced. Then it was bonfires and woods parties with every Miller Lite.
So I'm at an interesting place in a mix, and to make a video about a particular topic, which is control in mixing and automation, and the benefits and drawbacks of, because there are some drawbacks to getting too much of a control freak mentality. Automation's fantastic, but you do enough of this and you start to realize there are some benefits to having more of a Zen approach. Maybe you've heard of mandalas. These are like the sand paintings that once these enormously elaborate artworks made out of different colors of sand, and as soon as they're finished, they're blown away, and it's really about the process of making it. Well, we don't want to blow away the mix when it's done, but there is something about the process and having freedom to make quick changes. One of the problems with automation, or exerting too much control, is you lose spontaneity. You can always make changes to automation, but particularly in a DAW, when you've got 60 or 80 tracks or more, and they all have their automation lanes, and it's a lot. And I think the tendency is to get more locked in, to what you're doing. Here, let me turn the music back on. And there is something to be said for there we go, to having the freedom to to move things quickly. One of the things I really appreciate about analog mixing, and obviously there's analog mixers that have automation too, but having these faders where it's so easy to rebuild a mix, and I will do that a lot. As I'm working on sounds, I'll have obviously a mix going to work on the sound, but then very often I'll break it all down, and I'm going to do that right now because it's fun, and it gives you a chance to rethink balances, and and it's also it's a lot easier just to like when an artist is here. And they say, can we have a little more guitar, whatever, instead of having to go find the track and select all the breakpoints and blah, 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 to be able to just nudge the analog fader is nice. It's really nice. And not to mention the fact that I will usually, ride like the lead vocal at least, if not that and other elements in a live performance of the mix, which is frankly getting to be a lost art. That was something that, long after console automation and fader automation was available, an artist like Tom Petty, for instance, was famous for this, where he insisted on mixing without it, and he wanted, hands-on faders. He wanted the mix to be a performance, and it's interesting, to see why. It's nice. But anyway, so I wanted to go over that. There's an interesting to me, but I have a little story behind this, and this may be why I sort of lean this way. When I opened my first studio in New York City in 1996, I had a Soundcraft Ghost analog console, and it's speaks well of the quality that they're still around, and they're still somewhat sought after, at least on the used market. It was a cool console, at the time it was sort of my feeling, the feeling at the time was, well, this is a step up from the Mackie 8-bus consoles. It's, it was not, a world-class piece of gear, but it was nice, and it is. And I used it for the first year or two that I had that studio. And then the Yamaha O2R became available. Let's get the music rolling. And, here we are, digital mixer, first real digital mixer with, full automation. And that was sexy as hell, and I really wanted it. And I had a client who was doing a long-term project, and he agreed to, finance buying that mixer, the Yamaha, in exchange for the work. And so we did. And in that case in particular, there was a serious trade-off between sound quality and control. And it was great having the control, but man, sound quality was not a match. And and I should say, like, I wasn't even using the converters in the O2R. I was purely, I had ADAT cards, and I was using it purely with digital in and out for mixing. So my point being, I got that board sounding as good as it could possibly sound, and still it was a downgrade sound-wise from the Soundcraft. And that was my first big experience of sacrificing sound for control and regretting it. And then since then, I've gone full circle. I've done full in the box work for many years, and as you've seen from the other videos and from the mixer right behind me, I've come full circle back to an analog workflow. I mean, it's a hybrid workflow, but I'm doing as much as I possibly can analog. And to me, the sound quality benefits are undeniable, for one thing, and for another thing, I find it to be faster than DAW work. It's like, my attitude is, like, if I can't dial in the right EQ on an analog EQ in under a minute, there's probably something really wrong with the sound in the first place. And that's never the case with a plugin, even an emulation of the same thing. So that's my feeling about it. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to go over, like, what the mix you're hearing right now. This is I've been talking about this in every video. This is Matt Friedman. He's a pop country artist. He splits his time between Pennsylvania and Nashville, and we're wrapping up his debut. Excuse my hand. My iPhone holder, aka my right hand, is getting tired. He's wrapping up his debut EP, and he's had so many songs to choose from, and we've fully produced a lot, and this has been a very careful decision-making process for him, and we're just about at the end of that road. And his music in particular has really benefited a lot, I think, from the size and warmth and punch of the analog sound. So this is his music, and I just wanted to go through, how I'm doing this, and then do a quick fader rebuild, because it's fun and it's interesting, to hear the individual sounds come back together. So let's see, I can't really flip the camera while I'm shooting, but I'm gonna just quickly scan. So this is in my other videos. We have an API box console. This has 8 channels on the left and 16 channels on the right. The 8 channels on the left have equalizers inline in the 500 series. You can see I have the BAE version of the 1073 Neve design for 6 of them, and then for 2 of them I have the Helios 5011 equalizers. These are reissues by H2 Audio. They did a wonderful job of recreating that EQ. I highly recommend, well, both of these, but you know, these are just really fun. And then I have 8 more channels over here, and this is, I can't see what I'm shooting, but this is the SSL X-Desk, and I've dedicated this to being a drum submixer, and I've got my API EQs normaled to these 8 channels. So that's kind of what's going on here. Now this is a very self-contained thing. What happens is the output, the main out of the X-Desk feeds, there's a summing input on the API, and that comes in on the center channel, but before all the processing, before the compressors and the inserts on the main out. So one thing we can do is let's start by pulling all the faders down. Okay, now we're still hearing the drums because the drums are coming in through the summing input. You can turn that off, right? Now the drum setup that I have, again, this is very self-contained. There is a stereo send up here. It's the Q send, but it's just a stereo send. So I'm building a stereo bus mix on that, which is going to the Fatso, and then that's returning on the first stereo effects return, and that can be dialed in here in parallel to the main mix. And then I also have a stereo reverb just for the drums, and that's the 2 mono sends, and I have that sending to this Lexicon MPX1, which is a nice unit. That's coming back on my second effects return. Again, I have a level there. We can pull it in and out. Actually, it was out. And so I've got my parallel compression, my reverb, all going with the individual channels, my mix level here, and you can see I have it very low. Part of that is by the time all these channels, 32 channels, are summed and they're going to the mix insert, it's going to this Fern VT7 tube compressor. Now you can see the level, and this is just with the drums, and you know, at what is actually a pretty low level, on peaks it's already hitting you know, 0 dBu, and I don't want to hit it very hard. You know, I'm trying to do a very light bus compression. It's also hitting the bus compressors here, again, very lightly. Once you put in the rest of the instruments, this creeps up, and particularly with the typical vocal levels for pop music, it gets, you know, you have to start this low to end up with anything even remotely reasonable by the time you're done. So let's start rolling some of them up. So I've got first channel on the API, which is actually 9, since that's 1 through 8, is my bass, and we've got the BAE equalizer that it's going to hit first, and then there's an insert on that channel, and on my insert I'm hitting first distressor up here, and the reason why you're not seeing levels is I have the Brit mode engaged, right? So if I take that off, you start seeing the levels. You put that in and you don't, and I'm hitting a little bit of the distortion on the audio chain. The Brit mode, sonically, it's very much like introducing a transformer on the sound. It's punchier, It's basically it's a transformer. So we bring that up. Oh, and I left out. So after the distressor, which I'm not hitting too hard, I'm also hitting this Audioscape compressor. This is Audioscape's take on a Varimu. It's the Stay Level Gates compressor. Retro also makes one as well. They're recognizable. And again, not hitting it very hard. It's a pretty simple design on this. It's your gain reduction just comes from how hard you hit the input. So it's hitting both because they both do very different things, but neither one too hard. But okay. So bass and drums, and already look what's happening to our levels, right? You can see how this is going to go once we get everything up. So let's roll a few more things in. Acoustic guitar. And in addition to the Neve-ish EQ on the acoustic, I'm hitting purple compressors on the left. All right. Now I've got a clean electric guitar, a dirty electric guitar, and an electric guitar rhythm. And that's one of the reasons I got the SSL. I wanted to be able to spread these out. When I only had the API, I pretty much had to put all my electric guitars onto one bus, and I can't overstate how much of a difference it makes having them broken out and having the channels. The clarity in the mix and the ability to do separate analog processing on each of them is tremendous. So we got clean guitar. By the way, these tracks were done in Nashville by a producer named Austin, and I feel terrible I'm blanking on his last name. I will find it. He's really, really talented. And he did, I think, all the tracks on this EP. Although we did vocals here. So here's our dirty guitar. And there's sort of left and right power guitars here. And notice when I solo, I still have the drums because the solo doesn't affect them. If I want to, I can pull them out here, and we can just hear that. Now there was this tremolo guitar that I have in an auto pan plugin. So there is some hybrid work. There is some plugin work being done. All right, and then we've got our lead guitar. And I haven't done it yet. There's no insert right now on the lead guitar. I'm going to be probably sending it through those Hazelrig VLC ones, but I haven't yet. Some keyboards, some pads, and some bells. My percussion track is like claps and tambourine. There's an 808. It's only on the choruses. Now look what this does. That low end energy of the 808. It's not the easiest thing in the world on a busy, fast mix like this to get the energy of the 808 to really have the impact you want and not suck up all of the dynamic range. It's a trick. All right. Okay, so now the other thing, there's background vocals, but before I get to that, Austin, the guy who did all the tracks, also printed his effects. So I have those coming on their own bus. And then I have my plug-in effects, my in-the-box effects, so delay throws, choruses, some things like that. And then I have my PCM 92, which is my vocal reverb. That's coming from the actual hardware over there. So you're hearing the vocal in the effects because they're coming from in the box. And actually the bass and the lead vocal have pretty similar processing going on in terms of the knee EQ, the vocals going on to the bottom distressor, not using the Brit mode, and then it's hitting our Audioscape clone of a LA2A. Very nice compressor for vocals. And you know, this is what I was saying before. Look at the levels now. And you know, the Fern can take that, but it's, you know, that's how easy it just fills the meters, and things like the 808 and the lead vocal just take up that dynamic range, and that's a bit of a trick in mixing. And we are also hitting the built-in compressor. I like to use that as if it was like an SSL bus compressor. So I have it dialed at more or less, well, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, and I don't want to hit it too hard. I want it to hit on peaks, and with a pretty fast release because it is a fast song. I want a little pump. I want a little energy in that. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to smooth it out too much. I really want all that transient energy. And the only other thing I didn't mention was, so in the master bus insert is the DW Fern, and then I'm also running through the Chandler Curve Bender EQ. And then that's about it. So my process is I go through all of this, and then I'm capturing to a track. We can make that. And right now the track's an input, so we're hearing it. But this was a mix I had already run, but I just throw it into record. Now, one interesting thing that us old school guys know is that if you're mixing this way and you're recording in real time back to an open track, one thing that you can do, which is super convenient, is you can punch in. So, you know, you can run your mix, and then, you know, you get to a transition. You're going from a verse to a chorus, and you can actually stop and change your fader situation or anything that you want to change, and then just, you can do it as an auto punch, or you can just throw it in on the fly, and it will be a gapless punch, and you can put together your mix in pieces that way, and it works great. It works perfectly fine. I was doing this in college in 1994 with an Audio Media 2 system, you know, and with ADATs, and you know, and you know, I was printing my mixes to this. This is the precursor to Pro Tools, the Audio Media system, and with an analog mixer at the time. And it's a great way to sort of do, you know, automation. It works. But so that's my process. But that ability to just pull the mix down and build it back up is, you know, so fast and so easily, is really cool. And, you know, you saw how quickly the levels got filled on that Fern, and that's a great meter for me. That's a great way for me to know, you know, how big the mix has gotten, you know. And the main output fader on the API is after that, so it has nothing to do with the level that you're actually printing. You can still print at a very reasonable level, but you know, the levels you just saw on the Fern, ideally, you know, I want them a little lower than that. I don't want to push it that hard. And so, you know, one of the jobs of this mix, of every mix, is going to be making it all work with that being reasonable. Now, that's where I would have loved it if if the built-in compressor on the API had a makeup gain. And you know, I don't want to make up. I want to control the output on the inserts end. But you know, I mean, really, the deal is it just forces you to be careful with your levels and not let the mix creep up too much. And you know, and like I said, this song in particular is a challenge because it's got an 808, but it's got a very busy, fast mix, so there isn't room for that 808 to breathe, and it, you know, it sucks up, it masks a lot of low end and sucks up a lot of dynamic energy. And what I haven't done yet, which I'm going to do, is do some side chain ducking of specific frequencies. And I am doing that right now between the main kick and the bass, carving out a little niche, you know, about 100 hertz on the kick to let more energy of the bass come through. But what I'll probably end up doing is taking the 808 and doing the same thing, like notching out a little bit for the bass and the other kick, and having it be a dynamic EQ that only comes in when they're hitting together, and to create create a little more breathing room on the low end. And the, you know, ironically, that'll actually let me make the 808 louder, because it'll give me the room to do that. You know, it'll fill in where it's not masking as much. So yeah, that's a great technique that you see people talk about between bass and kick, but you can do that in all kinds of ways. You know, you can carve out mid-range on the guitars for the vocal. There's lots of ways to use dynamic EQ, and my favorite tool for that is FabFilter, the Pro Q3. So that's an interesting point too. Anyway, I am going to put the mix that's already up there as the intro to this video. So it'll start with you being able to hear some of it without going through the iPhone microphone. And I hope, you know, people enjoy this, and I'm having a blast with the SSL and the API and this, you know, analog gear. And by the time it's all said and done, these mixes just smack. They're fantastic. I'm having a blast working on this stuff with Matt, and it's getting better and better. Adding the SSL was huge. Again, if for no other reason, it lets me spread out things like the guitars and get more separation and more specific on how I'm processing each one. And the clarity that brought to my mixes overall was great. It was a great move. So I'm happy about that. Okay, take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.